Imagine sitting across from Thomas Jefferson at a worn wooden table, the smell of coffee lingering between you. He's not some statue on a pedestal, but a man who understood a messy, uncomfortable, and profoundly human truth. He believed that revolution isn't just a political act. It's a deeply personal one. It's the necessary, often painful process of outgrowing our own outdated ideas. He once wrote that, "The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants." It sounds intense, and it is, but look closer. He isn't just talking about literal bloodshed in streets. He's talking about a different kind of refreshment, a necessary clearing away of what's old and rotten to make space for new growth. He's talking about the constant revolution of thought that each of us must undergo to truly be free. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right, that ironclad certainty that settles in your chest when someone challenges a belief you hold dear. It's a primal instinct, a defensive wall that goes up instantly. We all have it. It's the part of us that wants to win the argument, to be proven correct, to protect the way we've always seen the world. It's comfortable there, behind that wall. But Jefferson points us towards something else, something deeper than that initial reaction. It's a quieter, more observant awareness that asks a simple but terrifying question. What if I'm not right? This is the natural tension he understood so well, the friction between our instinct to defend our current understanding and our capacity to evolve into a better one. Think about that for a second. Remember when you were a kid and you were absolutely convinced of something. Maybe you believed a certain holiday figure was real, or that your hometown was the center of the entire universe. The moment you realized it wasn't quite true was probably a little disorienting, maybe even a little sad. But it was also a moment of growth. You didn't lose anything real that day. You lost an illusion, and in its place, you gained a more mature, more accurate view of the world. That's a miniature revolution. It's the same process on a grand scale that Jefferson argued was necessary for societies. It's not about chaos for its own sake. It's about the courage to admit that the old map no longer describes the new territory. Many of us cling to familiar ideas because they feel safe. They are the mental furniture we've arranged just so, and the thought of moving it around is exhausting. We build entire identities on top of these ideas. To question them feels like questioning ourselves, like pulling the rug out from under our own feet. So we often choose the easier path. We seek out information that confirms what we already believe, and we dismiss anything that makes us uncomfortable. We surround ourselves with people who agree with us. We fool ourselves into thinking we're being logical when, really, we're just being protective. Jefferson saw this self-deception as the greatest threat to liberty, because a person who cannot question their own assumptions is already a prisoner of them. His principle is gently brutal in its honesty. It asks us to become rebels in our own minds. It means developing a healthy suspicion of your own certainty. When you feel that surge of being right, that's the exact moment to pause. That's the signal to engage the deeper awareness, to ask, is this feeling based on evidence, or is it based on comfort? Am I defending an idea because it's true, or because it's mine? This isn't about doubting everything all the time and living in a state of paralysis. It's about creating a small space for possibility, a crack in the door for a new thought to enter. It's the practice of intellectual humility. It's the work of tending your own tree of liberty, pruning the dead branches of outdated dogma so that new, healthier growth can take its place. This is why revolution is not just right, but necessary. It is the fundamental mechanism of growth, both for a society and for a single human mind. Stagnation is not stability. Clinging to a broken idea because it's familiar is not wisdom, it's fear. Jefferson's insight was that this process is not a one-time event for a country in 1776. It is a continuous duty for every individual who wants to be free. It's the everyday courage to be wrong, to listen, to change, and to refresh your own understanding. It's a commitment to never stop the peaceful, personal revolution of learning. This cracks open the entire conversation about why we need to fundamentally change things. We start our journey in a place of simple, clear understanding. The world seems to make sense. We have our routines, our beliefs about how things work, and a general feeling that the system, while maybe not perfect, is at least functional and familiar. It is a comfortable place, built on the assumption that the rules we live by are mostly correct, and that progress is a matter of small, incremental adjustments. You might be someone who resists change at first, preferring the known discomfort to the unknown possibility. In this initial phase, our responses to problems are often quick and instinctual, like applying a small bandage to a scratch without questioning what caused the injury in the first place. We operate on a surface level, believing that if we just follow the instructions a little better, everything will eventually work out. Then, inevitably, we enter the confusing middle phase, where everything becomes wonderfully and terrifyingly complicated. This is the moment when the simple bandage is no longer enough, because the scratch keeps reopening, revealing a much deeper wound beneath. The old rules stop applying, and the solutions that used to work now seem to create new, unforeseen problems. Most of us feel uneasy during transitions like this, a natural reaction to the ground shifting under our feet. This difficult period is precisely what Thomas Jefferson foresaw when he wrote about the need for periodic upheaval. He wasn't advocating for constant chaos, but he understood that the challenges and inconveniences of this middle phase are not a sign of failure. They are the necessary growing pains of a society confronting its own outdated structures. It is the friction required to break free from a stagnant past. We start noticing the cracks in the foundation we once thought was solid, and that noticing is deeply uncomfortable. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately, that moment of hesitation where a knee-jerk opinion is replaced by a quiet, nagging question. This is the critical juncture where we must choose between a knee-jerk reaction and a thoughtful response, a contrast Jefferson highlighted as the difference between light and darkness. The knee-jerk reaction is the desire to force everything back into the simple box of phase one, to cling to the familiar even as it collapses. It is the voice that shouts for a return to a past that never truly existed in the way we remember it. The thoughtful response, however, is born from the confusion of the middle phase. It accepts the complexity and sits with the discomfort, understanding that a new clarity cannot be found by running back to the old simplicity. It is the hard work of questioning, of listening, and of building new mental models that can actually accommodate the complicated reality we now see. This is not an academic exercise. It is grounded in our everyday lives. It is the moment a worker realizes their entire industry is changing and decides to retrain rather than rage against the machine. It is the family that decides to have a difficult conversation about long-held traditions that no longer serve them. From that struggle emerges the new clarity, the third phase of the journey. This is not a return to simplicity, but an arrival at a more sophisticated and resilient understanding. The pieces reassemble, but they form a new picture, one that acknowledges the complexity we weathered. The revolution, whether in a society or in our own minds, is necessary because it is the only process that can transport us from a simplistic and failing model to a more adaptive and truthful one. The uneasy feeling of the transition begins to fade, replaced by the confidence that comes from having questioned, struggled, and built something sturdier. We collectively move from a place of being passive inhabitants of a system to active participants in shaping what comes next. The revolution is necessary because it is the catalyst for this profound growth. It is the difficult but essential journey from the comfort of what was to the promise of what could be. And it is a journey we are all invited to take, especially when the world around us seems to be begging for a new way forward. Through this discomfort, we begin to realize that the tightness we feel isn't a cage closing in, but the stretching of our own skin, the expansion of our own understanding. It's the growing pain of a perspective that's outgrown its old, comfortable confines. We've spent so long trying to fit ourselves into a world of predefined roles and expectations, like trying to wear a coat that was tailored for someone else's life. The seams pull, the fabric constricts, and we mistake that feeling for failure, for not measuring up, when all along it was simply a sign that we were meant for a different cut, a different design altogether. This process of stretching is rarely pleasant in the moment. It asks us to question things we've always taken for granted, to examine the very foundations of our daily routines and emotional reactions. Why does a certain comment from a coworker send us into a spiral? Why do we feel a pang of anxiety when faced with an empty Saturday and no plans? These aren't just random emotional events. They are signposts pointing directly to the boundaries of our current self-concept. They show us where the old shoes pinch, where the fabric of our identity has been rubbed raw by a reality that no longer matches who we are becoming. And here's where something fascinating begins to happen. As we sit with this discomfort, as we stop immediately trying to soothe it or run from it, we start to see the patterns of our own minds more clearly. We notice how often we seek external validation, how we look to horoscopes, personality tests, or the opinions of others to tell us who we are. This is the Barnum effect in action. That psychological tendency to accept vague, general statements as highly accurate descriptions of ourselves. We cling to these broad labels because they offer a semblance of order, a ready-made identity that requires no messy, personal excavation. But these labels are like borrowing a friend's prescription glasses. They might make the world seem a bit clearer for a moment, but they will never give you your own perfect vision. The real work, the truly transformative journey, begins when we put those borrowed glasses down and start to wipe the sleep from our own eyes. It's in the quiet moments of self-inquiry that we move from a generic understanding of human nature to a specific, intimate knowledge of our own. This isn't about finding a new label to replace the old ones. It's about realizing you never needed the label to begin with. You are the forest, not just a single tree that can be easily named and categorized. This shift is subtle but profound. It changes everything. You'll likely find daily decisions coming easier, not because life gets simpler, but because your internal compass finally has room to swing freely and find its true north. The noise of shoulds and supposed tos begins to fade, replaced by a quieter, more reliable signal from within. That agonizing over what to order for dinner, what to wear to the event, or which project to tackle first starts to lose its charge. The energy you once spent on these micro-anxieties is freed up, creating a newfound sense of mental space and calm. It's not that you become indecision-proof, but rather that decisions cease to be existential crises. They are just choices, one after another, and you learn to trust yourself to make them. Many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much. The driver who cuts you off, the long line at the grocery store, the printer that jams, these daily irritants begin to lose their power to derail your entire mood. This isn't because you've become a saint of infinite patience, but because your sense of self is no longer so fragile that it can be fractured by a minor inconvenience. Your well-being is less tied to the external world behaving exactly as you wish. You start to see these events for what they are: temporary hiccups in the flow of life, not personal attacks or signs that the universe is against you. This emotional resilience is one of the greatest gifts of this inner exploration. This journey inward is ultimately about reclaiming authorship of your own story. For so long, we let others hold the pen: parents, teachers, culture, social media influencers. We accepted their plot lines, their character descriptions, their definitions of success and failure. But now, we are gently taking the pen back. It can feel clumsy at first, your hand unsteady. The first few lines you write for yourself might seem shaky and uncertain. But with each word, your confidence grows. You begin to write a story that is authentically yours, with a protagonist who is flawed, yes, but also learning, growing, and capable of profound change. This isn't a solitary, lonely endeavor. It's a reconnection to the deepest parts of ourselves, and in doing so, we often find we feel more connected to others. When we stop performing a personality and start inhabiting our own, our relationships become more genuine. We attract people who resonate with our real frequency, not the one we were broadcasting to try and fit in. We have more to give because we are not constantly exhausted from maintaining a facade. We can listen better, love more deeply, and show up more fully because we are finally showing up as ourselves. Together, we discover that this path, for all its initial difficulty, leads to a profound sense of liberation. It's the freedom that comes from no longer being at war with yourself, from having your inner and outer worlds finally come into alignment. The energy once spent on hiding, pretending, and people-pleasing is now available for creation, for connection, for simply enjoying the texture of an ordinary day. The weight of constant self-judgment begins to lift, and in its place is a lighter, more curious and compassionate engagement with life. This feeling, this hard-won and deeply personal peace, is the ultimate destination of this uncomfortable but necessary stretching. It is the feeling of coming home to yourself after a long journey spent trying to live in houses that belong to other people. It is the quiet joy of authenticity. It brings to mind the timeless insight of Thomas Jefferson, who understood that true liberty is not a grand, abstract concept for nations alone, but a palpable, personal experience for every soul that seeks it. A feeling of profound relief and rightness in one's own being, like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit.